Dr. David Gikungu is the director of the Kenya Meteorological Department. He's our guest this morning. Dr. Ari, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room. How does it feel? Temperature namna gani? To welcome you to the conversation, City has the day's proverb. Every week, City has a proverb from one country in Africa. Mm-hmm. This week, he elected to go to the Republic of Congo.
Yes.
Congo, Brazzaville. Or the Congo.
The Congo.
And you're telling us the president of this country is called Denis Sassou Nguesso.
That is his name.
And the prime minister is called?
Anatole Colinet Makoso. Somebody else doesn't have a vice president. Said, I've just told you he has a prime minister.
You still want vice president again?
Exactly. Not everybody has a vice president. Or chief minister president. We don't have those things.
Okay.
Yes.
The proverb?
Two birds disputed about a kennel when a third swooped down and carried it off.
Two birds disputed about a kennel. And when a third one
came and swooped it. These two. This maggot is mine. No. This maggot, I saw it first.
I was the early bird.
Yes.
You're about to catch the worm.
Yes, exactly. And the worm was staring at both of them. A third bird came, gone.
So it's not always that the early bird catches the worm.
No.
Okay. A third bird could come in. Dr. Gikungu, when you hear this proverb, what's your interpretation of it? What do you think the people of Congo are saying with this proverb?
One can interpret in many ways. But what quickly comes to mind is the time you waste concentrating on one issue and the opportunity that a third party seizes, and you find that you are the losers because you concentrated narrowly on one issue. That's what quickly comes to mind.
It is absolutely spot on.
Thank you.
Absolutely spot on.
Kabisa, So just focus on something. You are arguing and squabbling, and you're actually not looking at it as an opportunity anymore.
Yes.
Now you're
more concerned about the fight than the opportunity.
Yeah.
Someone else sees the opportunity, doesn't waste time, takes it, gone.
Yeah. Then you start arguing. We were here first. Dr. David Gikungu, the Kenya Meteorological Department had told us earlier that there was going to be some heavy rainfall in this period and likelihood of El Nino. And we have now seen some heavy rainfall. But our president had said that you had told him that there may not be rainfall. Do we have El Nino now or do we not have El Nino?
Good question.
It's a good question.
It is a good question. Post to the weatherman. And having listened to what you are referring to, there's really no big issue or even departure from what he said, because he said that there will be a lot of rainfall.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we are experiencing. May I add that with El Nino or without El Nino, we have two main rainfall seasons in East Africa. The long rains that start from March up to May, and the other one that we refer to as short rains, October, November, December, which is the season that we are in. And every year, unless we have observed anything else that would result in a departure from that, we expect rainfall. So, and seasons are not the same. So, if he says there will be a lot of rainfall, even if there was no El Nino, he would still be right.
Okay.
The point I would make is that the forecast that we would make for a season like this one is not something that just happens abruptly. We started observing the possibility of an El Nino early in the year, around April, and when you continue watching those signals and they are positive up to June, you then get positive about that, and the forecast that is then issued in August, especially for the group of countries for the Greater Horn of Africa, that one is mentioned, that there is a strong possibility of an El Nino event.
Yes.
Come September and towards the end, I make the announcement for Kenya, the national seasonal forecast. And I talked about the same, that we expect El Nino enhanced rainfall. You will then ask me what El Nino is, because I think that is the problem that we have.
Okay.
When people talk about El Nino in Kenya, they are talking about rainfall. But in general, this is not what it means to everyone.
Okay.
Come back to Kenya itself. It is not every El Nino event that we have had that has resulted in a lot of rainfall, such as we have seen. It's actually statistical. You can look at the data. We've had a number. For example, 2016. I don't think we talk a lot about 2016. Yet it was a strong El Nino. The phenomenon was quite strong. The signal that we call El Nino, it was quite strong. So maybe we need to...
So what did we have in 2016? We had El Nino. How did it manifest? Was it rain? Was it heat? Was it
It
wind?
manifested as a normal rainfall season. Normal means when you take an average of what we've observed for a period of about 30 years for any station, you come up with what we call long-term means or long-term averages. And so when you are making a forecast, you are normally looking at what you expect against the long-term mean, and what we got in 2016 was really not, there wasn't much of what you would call a departure. El Nino, the signal for El Nino is not observed in isolation. There are other factors. For example, the temperature differences between what we observe over the Western Indian Ocean, which is along our coastline, and Indonesia. For a long period of time, I think five seasons in a row, we had a negative signal. We call it Indian Ocean dipole. It was negative for a long time. Early this year, it started showing positivity. When it is positive, and you have a positive El Nino signal, you are going for a strong El Nino event here over the East African region, and you are also going for the possibility of enhanced rainfall.
Let me ask you, Dr.
Yes, please ask.
When you were giving the regional forecast in August and the country forecast in September, and you said likelihood and high possibility of an El Nino enhanced rainfall season for October, November, December, were you telling us to prepare for extraordinarily heavy rainfall? Or were you telling us just, there's going to be rain as usual, but there's a dipole that's now positive on the other side, whose effect we will not feel? What exactly were you telling the country?
As I answer you, terms first. When I say possibility, it is because there are many determinant drivers which could step in and either reduce what has been foreseen or even cause a delay. But what we meant then was akin to what we call early warning systems.
Okay.
And that is why we give the forecast at least 1 month before the event starts to provide advice or awareness or even alertness for preparations for the various players or users of such information. Key among them is the government. And I'm happy to mention here that the government took us seriously. I was even called to make a presentation at a meeting that was presided over by everybody in government, led by the deputy president. I made a presentation. I am told it was scaring, and the description for that is because of what I'm calling a delay because of various drivers.
Yeah.
But the delay mainly was in Nairobi. In most of the parts of the country that I mentioned in that forecast, they actually started receiving excess rainfall in the middle of October, and there are some parts that started receiving rainfall in September. Why do I mention this? Normally, if you go to what I had mentioned earlier about statistics or long-term means, when you are planning an outdoor event, the month to pick normally would be September. This was a different September. It was wet over many parts of the country almost throughout the month. And what we were saying in the subsequent forecasts was that when the season starts, it will largely be a continuation, especially over Western Kenya. It will largely be a continuation into the main short rain season, and this is what we've been observing.
Okay. Dr. Gikungu, is it, you mentioned that, and indeed it's the case, when we hear El Nino, for a lot of people, all we see then is rain, and a lot of it, and flooding, etc., etc. So I think it's important to just go over what it actually is. What does El Nino mean when you talk about an El Nino phenomenon? What are we looking at exactly?
Can I add something? And that when we talk about it, is it the same phenomenon that what I've just said?
Yes.
Is it the same thing that is witnessed, say, for instance, in the East African coast, as the one witnessed on the West African coast, in Latin America, in India? Are they similar?
By the way, I had an arrangement with somebody to bring me some hot water. I need some.
Ednah, the arrangement stands.
Okay. And it's hot water.
Yes, hot water, specifically. Yes. Because now we are talking about hot issues. Okay, let's start there. What is El Nino? El Nino means the boy child in Spanish. It was coined El Nino de Nevada. This was coined by Spanish fishermen because of the timing. They observed that there was some general warming of the water of the western coast of South America. This would happen around December. And it's also referred to as the translation reads something like the Christ child, because of I think it's around Christmas time, but the timing of the waters, the fishermen know, and this is observation that was made in around 1600. It's fairly long ago. What we what we observe is that generally the flow of winds, what we call trade winds, the general flow is from east to west. Around that time, they observed that the winds would weaken, and when they weaken, that water, the water over Australia would flow back towards this coast of South America, and it would certainly have an effect, because it would affect the planktons and other sea animals that the fish would feed on, and so on. And so they would notice that the fetch would normally be lower during that period. And to date, it's not been possible to establish a pattern because it's not uniform. What we know is that it repeats itself between 2 and 7 years. And what it is associated with, that is now what is largely known. There is an opposite effect that is called La Nina. But before I mix myself, this phenomenon does not impact parts of the world in a similar way. When we are looking at the El Nino phenomenon resulting in enhanced rainfall here, it is causing drought, long periods of drought over Australia, which I mentioned when I was explaining about the flow of water, the temperatures, and so on. And so it happens in pockets. It's not something uniform around the world. Another thing is, even within Africa, there are places where El Nino does not necessarily result in a lot of rainfall. It's the opposite. There are also countries where if it is La Nina, they get something. If it is El Nino, they get something. So it is not everywhere where it is as distinct as we have observed it in East Africa. And as I mentioned, even within East Africa, there have to be other accompanying drivers. Thank you.
So, Ekari, what I hear you to be saying is that the one distinct feature about El Nino is that it's unpredictable, unusual weather patterns. It's something that occurs, yes, but it's not what you are accustomed to. It's something that, in terms of timing, in terms of appearance, in terms of manifestation, it is not quite what you're used to.
And it is not quite what you are saying.
This is very good.
Because observation is there. We observe it.
Yes.
And if we observe it from April going up to June, and there is uniformity, and probably it is also increasing in terms of strength. Because when you talk about signal, you are talking about, is it positive, is it
negative? Yes.
It is such that now in our science offices, it makes sense to assign an officer that particular role to just monitor this, because it has impacts. And the advice that comes from that desk will be serious if you are observing right, and we observe right.
So what we are observing right now in the country, is it in line with what you had started seeing January, February up to June? What you've now got a bit of certainty in August into September. What is happening now? Is it what you had seen? Is it what all your indicators had actually shown that this is what's going to be happening in Kenya around October, November, December?
It is so. It is what we have.
To what degree? 98%? 100%?
At least over 90%.
Over 90%?
Yeah.
It's happening the way you had seen it would happen?
Yes.
How long do we expect this to last?
The monitoring that we are doing and looking at all what the models are showing, there is indication that it will be strong enough to cause rainfall up to January, as far as the short rains is concerned. But the signal will be will last up to around April 2024. I need to be careful about this because I'm not saying that the rainfall will continue up to April, but the signal itself that we are observing, because it comes up like one climbing a hill. You reach a plateau, the top that we refer to. Now it looks like a plateau. The observations, that's what, and it's fairly stable. That's why there is no doubt that it is El Nino. And then it starts going down. So dying off completely, that is around April, May.
Okay.
Yeah.
So January up to the end of January or mid-January?
It could even last the whole month. Yeah, it again depends on how strong the other drivers are. There has to be sufficient moisture for clouds to form. And if you look at the seasons, what affects us here is, if I can put it very simply, the explanation. We know that from the geography that we learned in school is that the Earth revolves around the sun. But it makes it easier to explain. For figuratively speaking, we have the sun moving north to south, south to north. And that is what determines our seasons. Because wherever the sun is overhead, it causes low pressure. And that low pressure attracts moisture because winds will blow towards that low pressure belt. We are in a continent that is surrounded by water, huge masses of water. So that moisture comes over our area, it forms clouds, and the rainfall that will result from that will depend on the intensity of the other factors that, such as temperature, and the duration of that heating, and so on. And that is why I was saying you have that certainty of seasons forming. You will have the sun each year moving to the north and later on moving to the south. And and you know, our country is along the equator crosses across Kenya. This is what happens. This is the observation, and what we now do is just monitor all of those other factors that are related to the formation of rainfall and the other and the other elements that we observe in the system.
Okay.
Yeah.
To what precision or accuracy are these predictions then made? And I ask this because pursuant to these announcements, decisions are taken by governments, by organizations, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So obviously the science that you explain being used as a tool to then predict.
Yeah.
What accuracy and precision are we looking at here that would then form decisions at policy level that we have obviously seen?
The accuracy depends on what you are looking at.
Okay.
If you are looking at a very short-term forecast, it could even be 100%.
Okay.
If you are giving it a long term, the longer the period that you give it, the less we talk about skills of the models. The lower the skill of that model of the forecast. So, but up to 6 months you are almost 60% sure of the forecast that you are making. The other thing is that this is a part of science that keeps growing, where you establish a model, you use the data that is available, and you keep working at it. We are always improving on the models. The models that we are using now are fairly accurate. We also talk about calibration of the same models, and that is an ongoing exercise so that we make sure that the skill is as high as possible. Right now we talk about climate change. And this is now linking that with the long-term means. And there is no debate about that there is a lot of discrepancy. It's not what we would earlier on dismiss as just variability. It is clear that there is that departure. So about accuracy, still fairly accurate, and the shorter the term, the higher the accuracy.
Okay, so what duration do you normally give? Say, obviously these patterns are being monitored over time, isn't it?
Yeah.
We know when we get, the warnings, we hear that this could happen, there would be extended rainfall, and etc. For how long would this monitoring take place before Kenya Met or World Met or whomever Met decides to now say, this is what we are seeing and this is when it would come? What time period do you say that? Expect it in the next 90 days, expect in the next 30 days or whatever. Again, going back to policy decisions that would be made based on these announcements.
Like I said about periodicity, there is a forecast that we give every day.
Yeah.
But if you walk to the forecasting office and you say, I'm interested in the weather conditions of this particular place this afternoon, you will be told.
Okay.
So the standard that are released daily, weekly, and we have a running 5-day forecast. That's running. It's an instruction. Let's run this
every 5 days.
Every 5 days, and it is running so that tomorrow we'll be building on what we give today. The following day the same. Then we have monthly forecasts, and we also have the seasonal forecasts. The seasonal forecast is 3 months. And the monthly and the 3 months forecasts are good for government purposes, for planning and management of many things. Talk about health, talk about water management, talk about agriculture, talk about distribution of certain things, or talk about the possibility of evacuating people from some places, though that is a sensitive area because here right now what is emerging is that people will tell you, until the water reaches my knee, I'm not going anywhere. and sometimes they are basing that on past experiences.
Yep.
Yeah, and sometimes they are right. And that didn't mean that it didn't rain or there wasn't a flood.
Yes.
So there are all those things. There are plans that the information will help you make, depending on what you do or what responsibility you have.
And that's why I was asking about the accuracy, because it is upon that announcement over monitoring that has been made that then, whether it is at the county level, whether it's at the national level, then that decisions will be made, isn't it? Whereby you say it will be necessary then to relocate a number of people from point A to point B.
And by the way, the issue of accuracy is part of our activities.
Yeah.
When we are issuing a forecast, we also look at the previous forecast, the skill. Were there hits? Were there misses? To what percentage? So that you know what to go and improve on. If you are using certain models that are probably useful elsewhere on the globe and are not useful here, then you will know what to do. that is part of the activity. And accuracy is not in doubt because this is under technology that is always improving.
It is science.
It is science, and it is based on observed data, and observed data. The observed database is always growing.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, for very many years, Daktari,
Yeah.
you'd say, you know, many of your ardent consumers of data would be government,
Yeah.
would be institutions such as airlines and Kenya Civil Aviation Authority,
Yeah.
would be, you know, large-scale farmers, and then agricultural extension officers and such other people who would then take that information to farmers.
Yeah.
Have you worked out a way of reducing this information to be consumable to people? What Ndu is projecting on the screen, for example, is the latest 7-day forecast for the 7th to the 13th of November 2023. And it starts with looking at the review of what happened in the previous week,
Yeah.
and then looks at what will happen in the next 5 days.
Yeah.
But then the language of it just says, so we witnessed heavy rainfall in the country in the last 5 days. We are going to witness heavy rainfall. Let me just read it verbatim in what it says. The review of for 30th October to 5th of November. Rainfall continued to be recorded in most parts of the country. Isolated storms occurred in several counties. Daytime maximum temperatures decreased throughout the country. Nighttime minimum temperatures increased over some stations, including Narok, Nyahururu, and Kabarak, and decreased over others like Mandera, Wajir, and Mombasa. Forecast for the next 7 days, 7th to 13th of November. Rainfall is expected to continue over most parts of the country. However, special coverage and rainfall amounts are likely to temporarily reduce during the second half of the forecast period. Isolated storms are likely to occur in some parts of the country: highlands, east and west of the Rift Valley, the southeastern lowlands, and the coast. Now, as a layman reading that, you know, you have not told me anything. Rainfall is, it was raining last week, it's expected to continue raining this week. Tell me what's new.
I would feel sad if it was sent to the layman in that form. The recipients of this level are higher, and they use it as it is, and they are able to seek clarification where something is not clear.
Okay.
What we have is that in the counties, we have the observation stations.
Yeah.
And apart from that, we also have a person that we call County Director of Meteorology. They have specific duties, and that is to ensure that climate services reach everyone. Sometimes they go down to explaining the forecast in the local language, but that is not the point I'm making. The point I have is that there is a procedure that we call downscaling. And we have that technology that downscales the forecast to the village or to the zone where that person is required to offer the service, and ensure that it is understood, probably even guide on how it can be applied. That one happens.
Down to the so this information basically has to be consumed by somebody who will take it scientifically,
Yes.
and then break it down and come to household or village level and tell people.
Yeah.
Is it not possible, now that you are on social media and you have Twitter, to give it to us in a way that we'll understand immediately? Because this is what is on your digital platforms and social media.
Yes.
The highlands west of the Rift Valley, the Lake Victoria Basin, and the Rift Valley. We were asking ourselves the other day, where are
is
these
those?
places?
Where are the
Northwestern
highlands?
Kenya, Turkana and Samburu counties. We ask ourselves, so for example, the forecast for those highlands west of the Rift Valley, the Lake Victoria Basin and the Rift Valley, morning rains are expected over several places, reducing to a few places to the forecast period as the forecast period progresses. Afternoon and night showers and thunderstorms are likely to occur over several places. Night showers are expected over the few places, occasionally spreading to several places. What have you said?
It is going to rain everywhere.
In the morning and at night over several places in this area.
You should even be happy now that we are mentioning the places.
Oh, before it was not the case.
It used to be
No,
maeneo
it
ya
would
nyanda za juu.
Yeah.
Void.
Yeah, the highlands west of the Rift Valley.
Where are those, by the way, if I could just ask? Where is this place? These highlands west of the Rift Valley? If there was a town we would pinpoint, where?
Now we've gone down to the county level, and if you go to the counties, you will find that fellow I have mentioned who downscales, and they will give you even the village names, what they expect, and they work with other experts on the ground, so that whatever is grown there, if you are talking about agriculture, they are able to guide what would work in a particular season, and so there will be a given area, and there will also be the forecast that is expected, because the relief of land and the differences in the features of the land are different. So they are able to be specific to the needs and requirements of the area. I agree with you. There is generality, but this is a national forecast before it is downscaled to those levels.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I do hear you say is that the infrastructure exists within the Kenya Meteorological Department to share information about what is happening with weather patterns that would then inform decisions.
Yeah.
Down to granular specificity, right?
I don't know whether it is.
Well, I mean, you've just said at the very village level, you can even tell who can plant what based on what's happening with the weather. That's specific.
Okay.
Right?
Granular to me means those particles. So
Yeah.
It's grains.
So.
But it's okay.
Okay, I guess you hear what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
Are you satisfied then with the decisions? Because obviously the science here informs.
Yeah.
The practice also then is informed by same science.
Yeah.
And you have people around the country who are monitoring, who are doing this work. Are you, as practitioners of this science then, are you satisfied with the decisions that are then made at policy level to implement certain things that would mitigate against some of these things that we see after having warned well in advance?
That's a difficult question.
I know.
Am I satisfied? How can I be satisfied? Yet I'm watching the same things that you are watching. That probably lead you to ask the question. But you could also be asking me whether the government uses the information that we give. And the answer is yes. Satisfaction is another matter altogether, because its resources are never enough.
Sure.
But I see an effort to try and make use of the information to try and help situations. And let me give the example of something like health. When we talk about the possibility of drought,
Yeah.
you know what to expect of certain areas.
Yeah.
The places that suffer a lot when we have flooding, with the possibility of cholera outbreaks. We'll also have cholera outbreaks when we do not have sufficient water. Because it borders on hygiene levels and so on. There are also places where you talk about prone to malaria outbreaks. When we talk about flooding, and you know that the water will be stagnant over long periods and the temperatures are right, then there is a possibility of a malaria outbreak.
Yeah.
Somebody should do something about that. So satisfaction would come by the number of people who come to my customer service office, because I have such an office, to seek information about the particular sector that they serve. And I have data about that. That office is active.
Do they come?
They do.
Okay.
They do. There is even, before I got to this office, because I've climbed through the ranks, I know the kind of customers who would come to me. They come, they want data to go and analyze. Then there are some that I would give a forecast like the one you are taking me through. And they would say, if you have this is all I need, because I can extract the information that I require for my purpose. So that's the way it goes. Yeah.
There's been this talk, and it's something that occupies our mind, even the hour before you came. We touched on climate change.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk of weather, we talk about atmospheric changes, everything that goes with it. Does climate change and the reality of it, how does it mesh, make your workflow?
Okay. Good question once again. Better than the earlier one.
It's easier.
It's easier.
Making a seasonal forecast, and you're using a model. You are telling the model to give you the possible or the most likely outcome compared to what you observe normally, what you call average. It could suggest that given this condition and this condition that you also have, you are going to have less, or you're going to have more. Yes. Now, if you find yourself in a place where that model is not as useful as it was subjected to the earlier data, it means something has changed. And that's why we are talking about climate change, because the patterns are different. Talking about, for example, our current subject of El Nino events, you had me talk about 2 to 7 years. Maybe it's not right to just use the same subject, but we could talk about something else, the frequency of other things. For example, temperature. We have seen constantly it seems to be on the rise. Yeah, that's just one observation of an element. It is rising. And the story about climate change largely revolves around climate because it is climbing. So you will find even those things I was referring to earlier, like insects that would give rise to this and the other. Their life patterns have also changed. They have been impacted by the same. And so it becomes a matter that you want to pay attention to. Right now,
And that's what
there is something that we are trying to do about that, because climate change is real and it has affected frequencies of certain things, and that is really the way it is.
Okay.
But the methods of observation have not changed. The instruments have not changed. They have only improved. So that where we relied mainly on manual systems, we have digitalized, and it is an ongoing process.
Dr. Gikungu, thank you very much for joining us today. Please come again soon. So now you can teach us the science of observing weather. And then we can then understand the way you present the information to us.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.